Hey, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. Thank you for getting up so early, down under. Funny story before we begin. So I'm in Durango, Colorado, this big mountain town, and my wife was showing me a news article, and we have a kangaroo loose in uh, in the town of Durango, and the cops. It's a repeat offender. The cops are constantly getting it and bringing it back to the where it should be. It's kind of funny. So
You need to send probably an Aussie cowboy over to wrangle that one.
I know it's a
I don't know how
kangaroo.
good
I've
your
seen it.
ranges
There's
are.
kangaroos get vicious. I saw.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You've probably seen plenty of the YouTube videos, right? They can staunch up on you,
Yeah, exactly.
and yeah, they can pack a punch if they want to.
That's right. Well, tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, right. So my name is Matt. Based in Sydney, Australia, as you can probably tell. I've been running a digital marketing agency for a good part of 20 years now. It's the very first thing that I did leaving school. I actually started it in high school. I was working for a small arcade business and kicked off with them. I built them a website. At the time, the internet was emerging when I was in high school. So I'm probably showing age a little bit here, but it was exciting times. I liked the idea of technology, the way things were going online. So the web design and web development is where I kind of had set up my roots, I guess. And I always wanted to work for myself. So I started a business at that age. Obviously, all the things that could possibly go wrong with it went wrong with it, because when you're a kid and you start a business, you learn. I had some good opportunities from that, though. It was a great foundation, and the determination was enough to learn things quite quickly
Very
and,
cool.
and get cracking with it. So that was the first stint, and then as I finished school, did a little bit of study. Still most of my learnings came from experience. I kind of pivoted the agency. It was a bit very generalist at the time, and doing a lot of design and web development work, but pivoted a little bit more towards e-commerce, as that was eventuating as well at that particular time, and had really been doing that pretty much ever since.
Awesome.
Mostly an e-commerce digital marketing agency. So there's a lot of generalist aspects to it as well, with your Facebook ads and social media content. I was doing quite a bit of video production and photography for products, and that sort of thing then as well.
Cool.
So very hands-on.
And so what's your goal with agency? You've been doing it 20 years. Is it to build it up and sell it, create a really nice lifestyle business, be an incubator agency, create other things, or something else? What's the goal?
I guess I like the idea of being a digital nomad to an extent. And I think for a lot of my career, I had actually worked as a solo operator for that reason. Never had an office, always worked from home, always worked remotely. So the idea of being able to be flexible
Even
about
20
where
years
I'm
ago.
working,
Wow.
even 20 years, yeah, that's right, the whole time. So a lot of bad habits kind of develop from that as well. But when you have no choice but to generate an income from your labor, from your time, your work, you get things done. You do surprise yourself, and that's not to say that I didn't have a couple of small stints of employment with some local businesses. Particularly I think about 10 years ago, I worked for a pretty decent sized US based company, actually, as a safety supply company, which gave me a bit of the foundation for enterprise level e-commerce. I understood a lot more about teams, project management, the differences between the departments in a corporate, and definitely the tools and resources that you need when you're working on a pretty big project.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. That was really good. And then once I was there for about 2 years, that's usually enough for me in employment. And I took away from that everything that I think I needed to learn, to move the business in a more enterprise direction. So that was a big pivot point for me as well. But yeah, essentially, always traveling. I've never really looked at the idea of selling the agency. I've always known that there's challenges that come with that. I'd probably never get what I want for it or what I think it's worth. It's always better for me to just be an income source and something that I enjoy doing.
Okay. And I want to talk to you too about, you bought an agency.
Yep.
While you have this agency, why? And what were you looking for?
Okay. Yeah. So it's a very good question. um, so a business partner and I, the two of us who actually bought an agency. So we bought an agency called Growth Labs last year. Growth Labs with a Z. My business partner and I have had been friends and associates for 20 years. Pretty much the whole time that we've both been in our career, we both pretty much went the same way. Separate agencies. My skill was a little bit more in production and e-commerce technical stuff, whereas he's a little bit more sales and marketing aligned. So we were able to bounce off each other quite a bit with ideas and also opportunities. So he would outsource some things to me, and I would outsource some things to him. And it was pretty good. But for the longest time, we hadn't actually partnered on anything. And last year, we kind of said, we've been doing this for so long. We're generalists. We wanted to see if there was an opportunity to partner on something new. And for obvious reasons, we're looking at a specialist opportunity, something that could potentially ease us out of our existing agencies into something that was a little bit more automated, and gave us, I guess, the next career move, respective of our age and experience and that kind of thing. So we talked about, potentially starting a business fresh or buying something. And we figured, after the amount of work that we've done and everything that we've started, we had started other businesses on the side here and there. And, as you typically do when you're a bit of a serial entrepreneur, even though I hate that term. So we said, let's have a look on Flipper and see what's out there to actually buy. So we jumped on Flipper. We came across Growth Labs. We thought this is pretty interesting. Description seemed interesting so far. We thought we might reach out and see if we can, get a little bit more information about it. So we come across.
What was the size agency that you were looking to buy?
Something that we could afford, mostly. Something that was probably just shy of the 7-figure mark, which hit the mark quite well on this one. It was more to do with, we could pull our funds and invest in something that we could afford, but it was more to do with what its opportunity was. What's its potential? Where's it at now? How has it gone and why? And can we automate this thing? Can this thing be good for us? So that was the bit of a guide there. So this agency we came across as an outbound lead gen agency, and they specialized in cold email marketing. It's about 7 years old at the time, so we did a little bit of digging into it. Found that the website, it's a little bit all over the place, just to try and get a bit of a gauge for the professionalism and what the industry, how the industry kind of saw this agency at the time. So thought the industry looks a little bit over the place, but it is 7-year-old business. Seemed to have fancied itself on copywriting, and a few different generalist marketing services as well, like Facebook ads. They're doing funnels and things at the time. So it's, we said it looks interesting. Let's reach out and ask them for some more information. And I guess we contacted them. We had a meeting with the owner of the business, with the I think it was the account manager from Flipper as well, and hit it off pretty much off the mark. It was great. The former owner was similar age to us, similar experiences to us. We vibed quite well. We thought we could probably get along with this person. Everything seems above board. So, let's dig in a little bit more. And then we signed an NDA. We got the profit and loss statements for the past 5 years. And the confidence was building with everything that we had seen so far. We also uncovered that the former owner, had a bit of a reputation in the marketing space in Australia.
Like a good reputation or a bad one?
A good reputation. A glowing reputation. Yeah, that's a glowing reputation, actually. A regular keynote speaker at marketing conferences, regular podcast guest, He seemed to have a couple of business coaches. There was a bit of, there's pattern consistencies in the types of things that he was showing up on. But for all intents and purposes, you thought, yes, this guy's quite popular. He's been running this business for about 7 years now. What could possibly go wrong? It all looks pretty good. And then the other thing too, the financial reports kind of demonstrated the trend that you typically see over the past 5 years, where you got that spike during the COVID years. The lockdown, when the markets kind of went a little bit crazy. It had almost hit 7 figures in 2023, which was awesome. There was a bit of a nosedive in 2024 also. So it was running at a loss for quite a number of years, even despite those revenue figures. But in 2024, even though it flattened out quite a bit, it was also running at a profit finally. So we thought maybe it's operating a little bit more lean, maybe because he's planning to sell. There's a few changes in the way the spending habits are going. So we put it down. We asked ourselves everything that we needed to know to make the decision right. And obviously, when you're experienced enough in running a business and in marketing, you can anticipate as much as you can about what could be right and what could be wrong. And obviously, we wanted to protect ourselves. So yeah, we had to dig deep into some things.
So on the profit. Obviously he wasn't that this agency wasn't making any profit and then started making a profit. What percentage was that on profit?
The percentage of profit was around, in that last year that we're noticing, it was around the 10%, which is probably about 8%.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I guess, yeah. Sorry, go.
Yeah. And did he do any add backs? So obviously all of us as entrepreneurs, we try to write off as much as we can. Was that after add backs or before add backs?
Yeah, so I guess that's what I was kind of alluding to without saying it. There's obviously quite a few personal embellishments that go on in the accounts. He started out as a freelancer, and I guess it eventuated into something a lot more, but probably some aspects of the business, didn't quite change because, you avoid your tax a little bit with some personal embellishments like your cars and some of your lifestyle expenses. And, in fairness, I guess that's a lot of the reason why finances were the way they were. The ad backs were showing all of that for obvious reasons. The profit margins went way up once the ad backs were removed. The ad backs were add back. And then we started to see a much clearer picture of the financial position of the business. And that was inspiring as well. We could see that if we ran it lean, even with the significant team size there, it looked worthy.
Okay. All right. And then
not without
what was kind of after going through, so were you just looking at the P&L, or were you guys looking at reoccurring? Were you looking at churn? What else were you guys looking at?
So we knew that we obviously needed to see more. P&Ls weren't going to tell us everything. And at the time, we were talking quite a bit about pipeline. We were trying to get a gauge of how the business was actually performing more in very recent times. So that 2024, at the time we were talking, it was sort of July. So we needed to know how the whole year had already panned out and what the rest of the year was looking like. And because of the fact that obviously he was quite protective of client names, but there was also this allusion to, a big marketplace who apparently had signed an agreement, which turned out to be Airtasker, but they hadn't actually signed an agreement. And also some other clients, we said, let's sign an NDA and let's get a look into these names. So he was happy to, give us an NDA, gave us access to Xero. We had a look into that to get a bit of a gauge of, who the names were. Not a lot in there, which gave us indication of, reputable businesses. But we did quickly learn that a lot of the client base had come from the owner's reputation and his activities in the space. So it's quite obvious that, a lot of the work that he was doing with podcasts and keynote speaking, that was lead gen for the business. Yeah, not surprising. It is obviously quite effective, but not too much aside from the business's actual lead gen activities in cold email was centered around or any other channels for that matter for lead gen for the business itself, aside from his own.
Okay.
So
And
we
then,
looked into that. Yeah.
so when did you guys get to like of intent?
Letter of intent. So we were actually quite quick. Obviously, we were excited, ambitious, hungry for the idea of it. So was he. And we figured, okay, he's selling, so it's no doubt, we just assume that anyone who's selling an agency is pretty keen to get out. That's always seems to be the way that it goes. So we moved
So you
quite
didn't want
quickly.
him to
Moved as
stick
quickly as we
around?
could. Oh, actually, no, we did. That was a big part of the agreement. We ended up putting in an offer, and I think it was a sort of a 1.3 multiple, if I remember right. We put in offers probably about 2 to 3 weeks after we started talking. So it was quite quick. We did our due diligence quite quick, a little bit too
1.3
quickly.
on top line or EBITDA?
The EBITDA.
Good.
Yeah. Because that was the big thing. That's right. So it was 1.3 on where we knew it was really at, and we thought this is a fair offer. And it turns out that after some very small negotiations, they were quite content with it, quite happy to move forward. So we started that part there.
So what
Yeah.
what would you have done different looking back?
So the due diligence, I guess you'd probably have to understand a lot more about how it panned out before we could
Yeah, go for it. Tell
get
us.
to if you could get to that if you like, because it's a pretty long story from that point onwards. So I guess we knew that, considering this guy's reputation was quite up there in the industry, and so much of the client base was dependent on his presence. Not to mention, you don't want to take risks with the acquisition and move out too quickly, right? So we said, look, we're gonna structure this as an earnout, and we got a fair bit of that knowledge, I guess, from your podcast, from this show. We had to look into what's the ideas around how to buy an agency, what's the best way to structure it. So we said, let's spread this out over 3 years. In the first year, we would pay 50%. Second year, if it meets certain targets, it would be a further 25%. And in the last year, 25% again, provided it meets these certain targets. And we wanted him to stick around for 12 months. We needed him to transition his knowledge, obviously the handover, but also potentially introduce us to some of his network, and get that transition phased in, not to spook the clients, and just move on. Much that he was all for it. Said, "Yep, I'm more than happy to do so." I'm quite keen on the success of the business still. If it wasn't going to sell, I would have stuck around and just pivoted to what I wanted to do and that sort of thing. So that's good, because we're going to need you to do quite a bit, and obviously we wanted to learn how he was doing things. We figured that was probably a comfortable sort of time frame to make that change. It was going to be 6 months full time, 6 months part time, but with the expectation contractually that he'd do exactly what he was doing before we bought it. So we could kind of observe for a period of time and take over from there. And then I guess what happened was, he was in, at the time that we signed the deal and got going, he was on holiday with the family. So we said, look, give us access to everything, all the assets, and we will do some studies. We'll do some background work while you're away. We won't officially kick off until, I think it was the 1st of September, enough time after he had come back before we could get into a rhythm. And obviously there was, there's a bit of overlap, I guess, with clients and work and some financial things. We just wanted to make it nice and clean. So let's start from this point here. So in that couple of weeks that he was away, I was in the Slack channels, doing some reading, watching some videos. Quite a few Loom videos were going around. Clients were in the Slack channels as well. So I was checking on conversations and just trying to get a bit of a feel for how the team collaborated and how he worked. And that was a lot to already start off with, right? And I guess this is where one of the cracks first started to appear. I had come across a channel from 2 years earlier where I could see that the team were talking about trying to offboard a problematic client. When I looked into it more, what I found was that the client was trying to hold the business towards its ROI guarantee. And this is something that we hadn't uncovered in our due diligence, particularly because in most cases there was no contract. But it turned out that this was a regular thing. So when I asked him about it, in Slack, I just sort of messaged him and said, what's this client looking for with this ROI guarantee? And he's sort of come back to me and said, oh, look, that was he called it a Hormozy level error. And I later learned that it had something to do with this whole Alex Hormozy $100 million deals thing where you offer guarantees.
Yeah,
But I suppose they're supposed to
the
be.
guarantee that I always love to offer. Well, if you keep doing it the same way, I guarantee you're going to be in the same spot.
Yeah. It's that's almost like the definition of insanity, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I sort of found out. There was this it's kind of a way of front loading deals so that you can ensure the client's going to sign on by giving them no reason to say no. In a lot of cases, these things were not written out. There was no conditions, and for a lead gen agency that prided itself on having no involvement in the sales process, I couldn't quite understand why there was an ROI guarantee. How can you verify that? How can you validate it? And what sort of influence do you have to ensure that it happens? But they were there. They were just flat out promises made. And anyway, in this first particular case, I was told that it was an error from 2 years back that he had learned from. It was a massive pain in his ass and caused some serious grief. And this client was there to hold him to it. And you can understand why. This is small businesses that were promised, that they were going to get their money back on their investment. And if they hadn't, for whatever reason, they wanted to know why and how it could be resolved. And so I thought, okay, he said it's no big deal. It's being handled. I can handle. I can deal with it. No worries. It's good. It's 2 years earlier. He says he's learned from it. Shouldn't be a problem. Turned out most of the contracts for the new clients that had been onboarded within 3 months of the acquisition all had ROI guarantees. And some of them were written. And we were told later on that he avoided having contracts with clients because it felt like it was a bad thing. It had negative overtones to it. But a couple of clients were fintech or pretty serious businesses that said, no, we need to have a contract in place. You need to stipulate your return guarantee in there. So disgruntlingly, that's what ended up happening. But in a couple of cases where clients had they weren't satisfied with the success of their campaigns because that was the second crack. Too many campaigns weren't actually performing. The open rates and the reply rates, particularly the positive reply rates on a lot of these cold email campaigns, just weren't up to spec. And with an ROI guarantee, what should have been probably a 2-month campaign, was leading to 12 months in some cases. And we did actually find that there were a couple of clients that had been around still after 12 months that were really only supposed to be there for a couple. That's the total investment was, somewhere more around the 2-month mark. So that was a bit of concern. They were starting to drop off. There was the churn there. So then I, had to look into it. What else have we not uncovered in the due diligence phase? How was I supposed to know to ask? Are there any unusual arrangements with clients with guarantees that we can't possibly achieve because, we don't have the competency for it. And also we have no way of verifying if they're being honest enough. And I guess, one thing led to another. During an unfortunate, legal dispute that had kind of pursued from this whole situation, among other issues with the acquisition, we were sort of told that this was done in good faith, and we should have asked. We should have done this in due diligence. We should have checked more. And I sort of said to myself, and I said back to the other party, why would it be up to me to ask questions that I wouldn't even know to ask? If someone's being honest, and if you claim to be doing this in good faith, to me that requires a level of honesty and being forthcoming, right? If you've had 7 years experience in business and you're offering ROI guarantees that have already bitten you in the ass quite a few times over years, wouldn't you come forward with that information? Isn't that something that we should probably know? So, regardless of the legalities behind due diligence, I would think that that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Like that's why I always tell everybody you got to kind of really truly dive in deep and really trying to figure out why are someone trying to sell, and
Yeah.
what were they
Yeah. And
kind of coached on selling as well, right? Especially if they have a broker or a service that they're using. A lot of times those people are coached to say particular things because this is usually the first time doing it, and it's a challenge.
yeah, yeah, exactly right. And that's what it is. I took some pretty serious key takeaways from this whole experience, I guess. Yeah, because we have a restraint clause, and there's some questionable activity around that as well. Um, in the sense that the former owners pretty much spun up an almost identical business, but in a coaching delivery format, which is the thing to do when when you've stepped out of running a business, running an agency, is start coaching on that work. Yeah, and then there's other conduct around reliability. We actually, unfortunately, we kind of had to suspend his involvement in the business back in February once we realized that there were a few contractual breaches. We had a couple of clients even ask us to get him off their accounts because there were so many mistakes with the campaign. So obviously he was still very heavily involved in the strategy and the copywriting and all the key elements that amounted to a successful or a failed campaign. And the team were quite dependent on the input as well. That a lot of the team members weren't actually working autonomously at the time, so they were dependent on quite a few things. Just too much had gone wrong for too long that we said we have to pump the brakes on this and take over.
Yeah. So going through all this,
Yeah.
what are the big takeaways? And hopefully you do it again. Hopefully you continue to buy agencies with the lessons learned and not think about it of going, like, hey, I got food poisoning from Applebee's. I just won't eat Applebee's anymore.
And that's a good point, because we do actually have an appetite for more acquisitions now. And I think the takeaways from this, definitely one of the lessons learned is how to do this better next time. Because my business partner and I have realized throughout this, we work really, really well together. We are able to banter with each other as good Aussies do. Whenever we need to, but there's a lot of trust, and whenever we sort of identify a problem, or even if we want to critique each other, we tend to talk through it quite in depth. So I think there's a lot of professionalism there. The friendships obviously gotten to that point too, where it's like, yeah, we don't get too emotionally involved in issues or anything like that. Ideas are always a good thing too. So we bounce off each other a lot with that sort of stuff. And we said, you know what, we should consider a group of agencies. Why don't we keep buying specialist agencies and see what see where we can take it in the future.
So
I guess
looking back, how could you have figured out this in kind of the due diligence phase?
Yeah. So there's a few the key takeaways I've listed out pretty much in my mind is to number one, understand the arrangements that are made with clients in depth, not just contractually, but you've got to really talk to them. It's tricky because you don't want to split clients during an acquisition. So my thinking is that you reach out to the former client base and survey them, ask about what their experiences were, why they had left, and try to find a pattern there, get a bit of an understanding of how their experience went, if they was good or bad, and that should form a bit of a picture for you. And even ask more questions. Know to ask more questions to the owner about the clients and their arrangements. That's definitely a big one. And then there's obviously the second one would be to thoroughly analyze the performance of the campaigns. Even look at the metrics and determine, are these clients on a successful path? Are they actually clicking goals and achieving their objectives that they've set out to? Because as you know, a lot of marketing agencies tend to have, negative sort of reputation with a lot of businesses. A lot of businesses have been burned by marketing agencies in the past, and they tend to come to a new agency already disgruntled and already reluctant. So you kind of have to deal with that and build a rapport again from somebody else's negligence. So that's a big thing. So another great thing we discovered that we can do with the help of the rise in AI and LLMs is you got to hope that the head of operations has got a client list, a former client list with dates that they started, dates that they left, their attribution channels, and that sort of thing. You can run it straight through ChatGPT and ask it to visualize the data and create some graphs on the churn rate, the new client rate, where they're mostly coming from. Because what we found was that this business, even in the 2 years leading up to the acquisition, had almost a perfect pattern of churn. It would pretty much lose 3 clients every month and gain 3 clients every month. So it's making the MRR look quite consistent. And that was one of the things that I think that we kind of slipped up on when we were assessing the financial reports. It can look like it's always good, but that's not
you can make the
retention
numbers
rate.
look, however, especially with ad
Yeah.
back, right? Like,
Yeah.
we'll link up in the show. You guys check out the episode we did with Chris Dwyer with rankings. He's a $30 million agency, and he bought one of our members. He was a member too, and he did ChatGPT. Like, from what questions should I ask? Just the financials. What should I look at? Like, just everything you're talking about here. Like, think about it. Like, there is so much data with all these things. It's hard for us to kind of see the patterns, or as dumb as
That's
I
right.
am, to see that pattern. But using AI and these models, it can see models or see patterns that we wouldn't be able to see before. So
Yeah, exactly right. I wish I had done that before signing the deal. That's for sure. Because in hindsight, you do realize that due diligence probably should take a couple of months, maybe. I mean, obviously it's variable, right, depending on the size of the business, but definitely the amount of time that we spent on it wasn't enough. And I wish I even went to ChatGPT and sort of asked it to spin up some ideas on what I should be looking for. I'm sure it would have been much more thorough than what we anticipated, right? But definitely, knowing that if you're going to have a problem with the owner, if something's going to fall apart and their tenure suddenly ends much earlier than it was supposed to, I guess keeping in mind that that 80% or 90% of new client attribution to their personal brand and their activities is going straight out the door with them as well. So, 80 to 90% of your monthly recurring revenue is going along with them. So that's something to prepare for as well, I guess, if you can. And then the last big thing for me was not just asking why they're selling, but asking why it was started in the first place. Why was the business started? It's because that's very telling. It gives you a gauge of how it was managed, how it was run throughout its whole time with that particular founder on board. And if it was there to genuinely solve a gap in the market, or if it was just an opportunity for the owner to capitalize on the personal brand and make bank, fly business class on holidays, it's 2 completely different ways that you would run the business. And that's just 2 examples. So that's what I've learned pretty much from this experience.
Well, I appreciate you sharing this with all of us. That's how we all learn, right? We learn from you learn from being on the bottom of the mountain, not on the top.
Exactly right.
And you just gotta like, for example, like with the agency that we were gobbling up agencies, I learned so much from that, of what not to do. Because once you start putting things down the tracks and going, you got to be like, all right, what makes sense? And this stuff is just common sense when you look back and be like, oh, right, like, because we bought some companies like we shouldn't have either. And looking back, we're like, oh, we should have asked that. And then we just did that one and the next one and the next one. So, but thanks so much for coming on the show. Yep, go on.
Yeah, sorry. No, I was just going to add to that. Like there was actually a silver lining to all this too that I hadn't actually covered. If I've still got a couple of minutes to share, but just in the fact that once we realized that as a cold email marketing agency, lead gen agency, once we realized it was kind of stuck in the past with its methods, lengthy copywriting and spray and pray type approach to the email, it actually still had great foundations. Like the team were exceptionally experienced in that space. The foundations were there for the email infrastructure to make the upgrades to, and basically to steer it more towards an AI personalized, scalable, lead gen agency. So that was really cool to know. And considering my techie background, my interest in the tech side of things, and the way things work, that inspired me more to realize that we need to move this thing forward. And there's much more opportunity than we originally anticipated when we actually decided to buy this thing. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, there's always lessons and always silver linings to everything we do, and I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing it with the rest of us. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe. We have a lot of amazing guests just like Matt coming on talking about things we've never before, so make sure you subscribe. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want more content like this, make sure you click on the link on the screen or check out your most popular podcast platform where the full episode is there. And until next time, have a swank day. What are you doing? Go check it out. Click on the link. I'll see you soon.